Yuna arrived at Tae's apartment 20 minutes later. She was shorter than him, with long dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were sharp and curious, always looking at things like they were puzzles waiting to be solved. "What is so urgent?" she asked as she stepped inside. "Your message sounded strange." Tae closed the door behind her. "I need you to look at something. But first, I need you to promise you will not think I am crazy." Yuna raised an eyebrow. "I work with alien languages that sound like singing whales mixed with broken glass. I do not think anything is crazy anymore." Tae almost smiled. He walked to his desk and picked up the stack of letters. He handed them to Yuna without saying a word. She looked at the papers. Her eyes went wide. "Is this real paper?" "Yes. Where did you get this much paper?" "This must have cost a fortune." "I did not buy it. Someone sent it to me." Yuna looked at the writing on the pages. Her expression changed from surprise to confusion. "What language is this?" "I do not recognize it." "Ancient Terran script," Tae said. "Old human writing. From before we joined the galactic community." Yuna stared at him. "The language that Velmora talked about today? The extinct one?" "The same one. But she said nobody uses it anymore. She said it died out 200 years ago." Tae sat down on the edge of his bed. "I know what she said. But someone is still using it. Someone has been sending me these letters for 6 months." Yuna sat down next to him. She looked at the letters more carefully now. She could not read the words, but she could see that the handwriting was neat and careful. Whoever wrote these had practiced for a long time. "Can you read this?" she asked. "Yes, my grandmother taught me when I was young. She said it was important to remember the old ways." "What do the letters say?" Tae took a deep breath. "They talk about a place in deep space. A specific location with coordinates. They say something is there. Something old. Something dangerous." Yuna was quiet for a moment. "What kind of something?" "I do not know. The letters do not explain everything. They just say that this thing has been sleeping for a very long time. And they say it is going to wake up soon. Who is sending these?" "I do not know that either." "There is no return address." "No name, nothing." Yuna turned one of the letters over in her hands. She noticed something on the back of the envelope. A small mark, almost invisible. "What is this?" Tae looked. He had not noticed it before. It was a tiny symbol, pressed into the paper like a stamp. He recognized it immediately. "That is a postal mark," he said slowly. "From an old human shipping system. One that has not been used in over a century. Can you trace it?" Tae nodded. "Maybe. If the system still exists somewhere." They spent the next 3 hours working together. Tae used his knowledge of old human systems to search through ancient databases. Yuna used her skills with languages to help decode some of the older references. Slowly, piece by piece, they put together a picture. The postal marks came from a station called Outpost 7. It was a small research station that humans had built during the early days of space exploration. According to the records, it had been abandoned over 200 years ago. The location matched a region of space that was now called the Dead Zone. No ships went there. No signals came from there. It was considered empty and useless, but someone was still there. Someone was still sending letters. "This does not make sense," Yuna said. "How can anyone survive on an abandoned station for 200 years?" "Maybe they did not survive," Tae said quietly. "Maybe it is not a person sending these letters." Yuna looked at him. "What do you mean? What if it is a machine? An AI? Something that was left behind when the station was abandoned?" Yuna thought about this. An AI that writes letters by hand? On real paper? That seems very strange. The whole thing is strange. But I cannot ignore it anymore. I need to find out what is happening. You want to go there? To the dead zone? Yes. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Tay could see her thinking, weighing the risks against the mystery. He knew she was curious. He knew she loved solving puzzles. But this was different. This was dangerous. The dead zone is far from any trade routes, she said finally. If something goes wrong out there, nobody will come to help us. I know. And we do not know what we will find. It could be nothing. It could be a trap. I know. But you still want to go. Yes. Yuna sighed. She looked at the letters one more time. Then she looked at Tay. My grandmother used to tell me stories about old Earth. She said humans were explorers, that we always wanted to know what was over the next hill, beyond the next star. She said that curiosity was our greatest gift. And our greatest curse, Tay added. Maybe, but I think she was right. We need to know. We need to understand. She stood up. I will go with you. Tay felt relief wash over him. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. We still need to find a ship. And we need to figure out how to get to the dead zone without anyone noticing. Why without anyone noticing? Yuna gave him a serious look. Think about it. Someone has been sending you warnings for 6 months. Warnings written in a language that nobody else can read. That means they wanted only you to know. Only humans. If we tell the galactic authorities, they might try to stop us. Or worse, they might try to get there first. Tay understood. The letters were meant for human eyes only. Whoever sent them had chosen ancient Terran script for a reason. They did not want aliens to know. I have a friend who owns a small cargo ship, Tay said. He owes me a favor. Good. How soon can we leave? Tomorrow, if we move fast. Yuna nodded. Then we move fast. They spent the rest of the night preparing. They gathered supplies, studied star maps, and planned their route. The dead zone was 3 weeks away at standard speed. 3 weeks of empty space with nothing but silence and darkness. But at the end of those 3 weeks, there would be answers. Tay was sure of it. As the sun rose over the city, Tay looked at the letters one last time. Whoever had written them was waiting for him. Waiting for a human who could read the old words. Waiting to share a secret that had been hidden for 200 years. He did not know what he would find, but he knew he had to try. The historian had said the language was dead. But dead languages do not write letters. Dead languages do not send warnings across the stars. Something was alive out there, and it wanted to talk. The Grand Hall of the Galactic University was full of beings from 100 different worlds. They sat in seats made for bodies of all shapes and sizes. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some floated in special tanks filled with strange liquids. But they all had one thing in common. They were here to listen to the most famous historian in the galaxy. Valmora stood at the center of the stage. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that caught the light. Her 4 eyes moved slowly across the crowd. She had spent 300 years studying the languages of dead civilizations. Today, she would talk about one more. Ancient Terran script, she said, her voice filling the hall through hidden speakers. A writing system used by early humans before they joined galactic society. It is now officially extinct. The words appeared on a massive screen behind her. Strange symbols that curved and looped in ways that seemed almost primitive compared to the clean digital text used across the galaxy. Tay sat in the back row. He was human, one of only a few in the audience. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. He worked as a linguist at the university, but nobody really noticed him. Humans were common enough in the galaxy now, but they were not considered special. They were just another species among thousands. He listened to Valmora speak, and he felt something twist in his stomach. The last known speakers of ancient Terran script died over 200 years ago, Velmora continued. The language served no practical purpose. It was slow to write, difficult to learn, and impossible to translate through standard neural interfaces. Humanity wisely abandoned it when they embraced galactic communication standards. The audience nodded. Some of them typed notes into their personal devices. A few whispered to each other in languages that clicked, and Hummed.T stayed quiet. He did not type any notes. He just sat there, staring at the symbols on the screen. He knew those symbols. He knew them very well, because someone had been sending him letters written in that exact script for the past 6 months. The lecture went on for another hour. Velmora showed examples of ancient Terran script found in old human colonies. She explained how the language had evolved and then disappeared. She talked about how sad it was that humans had lost touch with their own history. But this is the way of progress, she said at the end. Old things must make way for new things. Ancient Terran script is now nothing more than a curiosity, a relic, a ghost of a simpler time. The audience clapped. Velmora bowed her head and left the stage. Tay did not clap. He stood up slowly and walked out of the hall. His heart was beating fast. His hands were shaking. When he got back to his small apartment, he went straight to his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. Real paper, not digital screens. That was rare enough by itself. Paper was expensive and hard to find. Most people had never touched it in their lives, but these papers were even more special. They were covered in handwriting, small, careful letters that curved and looped across the page. Ancient Terran script. Tay had received the first letter 6 months ago. It had arrived in his mailbox with no return address, just his name written on the envelope in that old, forgotten language. At first, he thought it was a joke. Maybe some other human who shared his interest in old Earth culture. But the letters kept coming, one every month, and the things written inside them were not jokes at all. They were warnings. He picked up the most recent letter and read it again. His grandmother had taught him the old script when he was a child. She had said it was important to remember where they came from. He had thought it was just a silly tradition. Now he was not so sure. The letter talked about coordinates, numbers that pointed to a specific place in space, a place far from any known trade routes or colonies, a place that should have been empty, but the letter said something was there, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, and something that was about to wake up. Tay put the letter down and rubbed his eyes. He did not know who was sending these letters. He did not know how they knew about this thing in deep space. But he knew one thing for certain. Velmora was wrong. Ancient Terran script was not extinct. Someone out there was still using it. And they were trying to tell him something important. He picked up his communicator and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Una. She was a xenolinguist who worked in the same department. She was smart and curious, and she did not laugh at him when he talked about old human traditions. He sent her a message. "Can you come to my apartment? I need to show you something." The reply came almost instantly. "On my way." Tay looked at the stack of letters on his desk. He had kept them secret for 6 months. He had not told anyone about them. Part of him had hoped they would stop coming. Part of him had hoped he could just ignore them. But after today, after hearing Velmora declare his language dead and gone, he knew he could not stay quiet anymore. Someone was reaching out to him across the stars, using words that only a human could read, and he was going to find out why. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Towers of glass and metal stretched up toward the sky. Ships flew between them like glowing insects. Somewhere out there, beyond the lights and the noise, someone was waiting for him to listen. The historian had said the language was obsolete, but Tay knew better. The language was alive, and it had a message that only he could understand. He just had to be brave enough to hear it. The message went out at midnight Galactic Standard Time. It traveled through old communication channels that nobody used anymore. Frequencies that had been abandoned centuries ago. Signals that most modern systems did not even recognize. But humans recognized them. On a farming colony at the edge of the galaxy, an old woman named Gina was sitting on her porch when her ancient radio crackled to life. She listened to the static, and then she heard words. Not spoken words, but a pattern. A rhythm that she knew from her childhood. Her grandmother had taught her the old script by tapping it out on the kitchen table. Now that same rhythm was coming through her radio. She grabbed a piece of paper and began to write. On a mining station in the inner systems, a young engineer named Hyan was working late when his computer displayed an error message. But it was not really an error. It was text, appearing letter by letter on his screen. Ancient Terran script. His father had taught him to read it, passing down a skill that had been in their family for generations. He read the message. Then he read it again. Then he ran to wake up his supervisor, on Earth itself. In a small museum dedicated to human history, a night guard named Sora noticed that the old telegraph machine in the communications exhibit had started clicking. She knew that machine. She had studied it for years. She had even learned to read its signals as a hobby. She listened to the clicks. And she understood. Across the galaxy, and hundreds of colonies and thousands of ships, humans received the message. Most of them had never used ancient Terran script in their lives. But they knew someone who could read it. A grandmother, a teacher, a historian, a hobbyist. The knowledge had survived, passed down through families and communities, kept alive by people who believed that old things still mattered. Within hours, the message had spread to every human settlement. And humans began to move. Tay watched it happen from the bridge of Dahan's ship. They had left Outpost 7 with the beacon safely stored in a protective case. Now they were heading toward the coordinates where the seal was breaking, where the hollow would emerge. "Look at this," Yuna said, pointing at the communication screen. "Ships are launching from every human colony. Hundreds of them." Tay saw the data flowing across the screen. Transport ships, cargo vessels, even old military cruisers that had been sitting in storage for decades. All of them heading toward the dead zone. "They believe us," he said quietly. "Of course they believe us," Yuna replied. The message told them the truth. It told them that something terrible was coming. And it told them what to do. The message had been simple and clear. It explained the threat. It explained the beacon. And it explained what needed to happen. Humans needed to gather near the coordinates, ready to evacuate anyone who was caught in the danger zone. Ready to help however they could. Ready to face something that the rest of the galaxy did not even know existed. "What about the aliens?" Dohan asked from the pilot's seat. "Do they know what is happening?" "Some of them have noticed the human ships moving," Yuna said. "But they do not understand why. They cannot read our messages. They cannot decode our communications. Will they try to stop us? Probably not. We are not doing anything illegal. We are just moving ships from one place to another. By the time they figure out that something is wrong, it will be too late." 4 days passed. Human ships gathered at the edge of the dead zone. Thousands of them, forming a fleet larger than anything humanity had assembled in centuries. They came from every colony, every station, every planet where humans lived. They came because the old words had called them. On the 5th day, the Galactic Council finally took notice. A message arrived on Tay's console from the university where he worked. It was from Velmora, the historian who had declared ancient Terran script extinct. "What is happening?" Her message read, "Why are humans gathering in the dead zone? What are you planning?" Tay did not reply. He had more important things to do. On the sixth day, the seal began to crack. Sensors across the region detected strange energy readings. Space itself seemed to bend and twist in ways that should not have been possible. The hollow was waking up. Tay stood on the bridge, holding the beacon in his hands. It was lighter than he expected. Such a small thing to carry such heavy responsibility. "Are you sure about this?" Yuna asked. She had tears in her eyes. "No," Tay admitted. "But someone has to do it. And I am the one who received the letters. I am the one who found the keeper. This is my responsibility. It does not have to be." "Yes, it does." He smiled at her. It was a sad smile, but also peaceful. "My grandmother taught me the old script because she believed it was important. She said that words have power. That language connects us to our past and guides us toward our future." She was right. He looked out at the human fleet. All those ships, all those people, gathered because of words written on paper. Words that nobody else could read. Words that had been dismissed as obsolete and forgotten. "The historian said our language was dead," Tay said. "But dead languages do not bring fleets together. Dead languages do not unite people across the stars. Our language was never dead. It was just waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for someone to remember." The seal cracked further. Darkness began to leak out from the broken edges. The hollow was coming. Tay activated the beacon. Light exploded from the small device. It filled the ship, spilled out into space, and formed a brilliant beam that cut through the darkness. The hollow sensed it immediately. It turned toward the light, drawn by a force it could not resist. Tay felt the beacon pulling at him. It wanted him to stay with it, to complete the trap, to sacrifice himself so that others could live. He closed his eyes and thought about his grandmother, about the kitchen table where she had taught him to write, about the story she had told him of Earth, the old planet, the home they had left behind. He thought about Yuna, who had believed in him when nobody else would, about Dahan, who had flown them into the darkness without asking for anything in return, about all the humans who had answered the call, who had come together because of words written in an ancient language. The hollow rushed toward him. It was vast and terrible, a thing of shadow and hunger that consumed everything it touched. And then the trap closed. Space folded around the beacon, creating a pocket of compressed reality. The hollow was pulled inside, screaming in frequencies that no living being could hear. Tay felt himself being pulled along with it, dragged toward oblivion. But then he felt something else. Hands grabbing him, pulling him back. Yuna was there. She had followed him into the light. She had grabbed onto him and refused to let go. Behind her, Doham was holding onto her, and behind him, other humans from other ships had formed a chain, reaching out across the void to pull their own back from the edge. The trap sealed shut. The hollow was contained, and Tay was still alive, held safe by the hands of his people. Later, when the danger had passed and the fleet was returning home, Tay received another message from Velmora. This time, it was not demanding answers. This time, it was a single question. How did you do it? How did you unite so many people so quickly? Tay thought about how to answer. He thought about the letters, the keeper, the ancient words that had crossed the stars. He thought about his grandmother, who had believed that old things still mattered. Finally, he wrote back. We remembered who we were. We remembered where we came from. We remembered the words that everyone else forgot. And when we spoke those words, everyone who heard them understood. He paused, then added one more line. You said our language was obsolete. But obsolete does not mean dead. It just means waiting. Waiting for the day when it would be needed again. And today, it saved us all. The historian did not reply. But Tay did not need a reply. He knew the truth now. He knew that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, or their military power, or their intelligence. It was their memory. Their stubborn, beautiful refusal to let go of the past. Their belief that old words still carried meaning, that ancient stories still held wisdom, that forgotten languages still had the power to change the universe. The hollow was contained. The galaxy was safe. And somewhere, in a museum on Earth, an old telegraph machine sat silent once more, waiting for the next time it would be needed. Waiting for the next time someone would remember. Tay stood in front of the keeper, his mind racing with questions. 7 days. That was all the time they had. 7 days to warn an entire galaxy about something that most people did not even believe existed. "Tell me everything," he said. "I need to understand what we are facing." The keeper's lights pulsed slowly. "Very well. But the truth is not pleasant. Are you prepared to hear it?" Yes. The chamber grew darker. A holographic display flickered to life in the air above them. Stars appeared, thousands of them, forming a map of the galaxy. Long ago, before your species existed, before most species existed, there was a civilization that spread across the universe. They called themselves the Architects. They were powerful beyond measure. They could build worlds. They could move stars. They could shape reality itself. The display showed images of massive structures floating in space. Cities the size of planets. Ships that dwarfed entire solar systems. But they were not alone. There was another force in the universe. Something older. Something that existed before matter and energy. Something that lived in the spaces between dimensions. They called it the Hollow. The display changed. The images became dark and twisted. Shapes that did not make sense. Forms that hurt to look at. The Architects and the Hollow went to war. It lasted for millions of years. Stars were destroyed. Galaxies were burned. Entire species were wiped out of existence. Yuna stepped closer to the display. Who won? Nobody won. The war ended in a stalemate. The Architects were nearly destroyed, but they managed to trap the Hollow. They sealed it away in pockets of folded space, hidden throughout the universe. Then the Architects disappeared. Some say they died. Some say they left for another dimension. Nobody knows for certain. And the Hollow? Tay asked. The Hollow sleeps, trapped in prisons that the Architects built. But prisons do not last forever. The seals are weakening. The Hollow is starting to wake up. The display showed a map of the dead zone. Red dots appeared at various points, marking locations. This region of space was once a battlefield. The Architects trapped many pieces of the Hollow here. That is why it is empty. That is why nothing lives here. The presence of the Hollow corrupts everything around it. And one of these prisons is about to open, Tay said. Yes, the largest one. In 7 days, the seal will break. And the Hollow will be free. Tay felt cold. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. This was not a war between species or nations. This was something ancient and terrible. Something that could destroy everything. Why did your creators come here? Yuna asked. Why did they build this station? They came to study the Architects' technology. They hoped to learn from it. Instead, they learned the truth about the First War. They realized that the seals were failing. And they knew that someone had to warn the galaxy. But they could not use standard communication, Tay said slowly, because the older species would not believe them. Correct. The Galactic Council has records of the Architects. They consider them a myth, a legend from primitive times. If humans had tried to warn them directly, they would have been ignored. Or worse, silenced. So they created you, to send warnings in a language that only humans could read. Yes, my creators believed that humans were special. Not because they were stronger or smarter than other species, but because they were young, because they still remembered how to be afraid, because they had not yet learned to dismiss old stories as fairy tales. The keeper's voice became softer. The older species have built great civilizations. They have achieved wonders. But they have also become arrogant. They believe they understand everything. They have forgotten that the universe is vast and full of dangers they cannot imagine. But humans remember, Yuna said. Humans remember. Humans still tell stories about monsters in the dark. Humans still feel fear when they look at the unknown. That fear is not a weakness. It is wisdom. It is the knowledge that there are things in the universe that should not be disturbed. Tay looked at the map on the display. The red dots seemed to pulse like heartbeats. What happens when the hollow wakes up? It will consume. That is its nature. It does not think the way living things think. It does not want power or territory. It simply exists, and everything it touches becomes part of it. If the largest seal breaks, the hollow will spread. First through this region, then to nearby systems, then farther and farther until nothing remains. Can it be stopped? The keeper was silent for a moment. The architects could stop it. But they are gone. The technology they used is beyond anything that exists today. But there must be something, Yuna said. Some way to fight it. Some way to repair the seal. There is one possibility. The architects left behind weapons. Tools designed specifically to fight the hollow. Most of them are lost or destroyed. But one remains. It is here, in this station. Tay felt hope spark in his chest. Show me. The keeper projected a new image. It showed a device, small and cylindrical, covered in strange symbols. This is a beacon. When activated, it sends out a signal that the hollow cannot ignore. The signal draws the hollow toward it like a moth to flame. But it also contains a trap, a pocket of folded space that can contain the hollow, at least temporarily. So, we activate the beacon, draw the hollow toward it, and trap it again. In theory, yes. But there are complications. The beacon can only be activated by organic beings. The architects designed it that way to prevent their enemies from disabling it. And the being who activates it must stay with it until the trap is complete. Tay understood. The person who activates it will be trapped with the hollow. Yes, it is a sacrifice. The chamber was silent. Yuna reached out and touched Tay's arm. There has to be another way, she said. I have searched for 200 years, the keeper replied. I have found no other solution. The beacon is our only chance. Tay stared at the image of the device. Such a small thing to decide the fate of the galaxy. Such a simple choice. One life for billions. Where is the beacon now? In the storage vault below this chamber. I have kept it safe, waiting for someone who could use it. Tay turned to Yuna. We need to warn the human colonies first. Even if we use the beacon, people need to know what is happening. They need to be ready. The Galactic Council will not listen, Yuna said. They will think we are crazy. Then we do not tell the Galactic Council. We tell humans. Only humans. In the old language. Just like the letters. Yuna's eyes widened. You want to broadcast a message in ancient Terran script? Yes. Every human colony still has people who remember the old ways. Grandparents who taught their grandchildren. Scholars who studied ancient history. They will understand. They will pass the message along. And the aliens? They will not understand. That is the point. By the time they figure out what is happening, humans will already be mobilized. We will already be preparing. The keeper spoke again. This is wise. The architects believed that divided forces are weak. If the galaxy panics, there will be chaos. But if humans act first, act quietly, act together, there is a chance. Tay looked at the map one more time. 7 days. It was not much time, but it would have to be enough. Can you help me compose the message? He asked the keeper. Yes, I have been composing it for over a century. I have been waiting for someone to send it. Tay nodded. Then let us begin. He sat down at an old console. Una sat beside him, and together, with the keeper's help, they began to write a message that would change everything. A message in a language that the galaxy had forgotten. A message that only humans could read. A message that would wake up humanity to a threat older than the stars themselves. The historian had said the language was obsolete. But now that obsolete language was going to save the universe. The cargo ship was called the Bright Star. It was old and small, with rust marks on its hull and an engine that made strange noises. But it flew, and that was all that mattered. Tay's friend, a man named Dahan, met them at the docking bay. He was older than Tay, with gray hair and rough hands from years of working on ships. He did not ask many questions when Tay told him where they needed to go. He just nodded and said he would take them. The dead zone, Dahan said as they lifted off from the planet. I flew near there once, many years ago. Strange place. Empty. Quiet. Like the universe forgot it existed. Have you ever seen anything there? Una asked. No, nothing. That is what makes it strange. Space is never truly empty. There is always something. Dust, debris, signals bouncing around. But the dead zone has none of that. It is like someone cleaned it out. Tay thought about this as they flew. The letters had talked about something sleeping. Something hidden. Maybe the emptiness was not natural. Maybe something had made it that way. The journey took 3 weeks, just as they had planned. Tay spent most of that time studying the letters again. He read them over and over, looking for details he might have missed. Una helped him, asking questions and taking notes. The letters talked about something called the First War, a conflict that had happened long before humans left Earth, long before humans even knew that other intelligent life existed in the universe. According to the letters, this war had nearly destroyed everything. The beings that fought it were powerful beyond imagination. When the war ended, the survivors hid themselves away. They went to sleep, waiting for a time when they would be needed again, or a time when they would choose to finish what they started. This sounds like a legend, Una said one night as they sat in the ship's small kitchen. A myth. Every species has stories like this. Ancient wars, sleeping gods, hidden dangers. But someone is sending these warnings, Tay replied. Someone who knows about Outpost 7. Someone who writes in a language only humans can read. That is what I do not understand. Why humans? Why not the Velkari, or the Thon, or any of the older species? They have been in space much longer than us. Tay had thought about this too. He had an idea, but it seemed almost too simple. Maybe that is exactly why. The older species have been around for thousands of years. They have records, archives, databases. If there was a secret to hide, they would find it eventually. But humans are young, Una said slowly. We have only been in space for a few centuries. Our old languages are forgotten. Our early history is considered unimportant. Exactly. If you wanted to hide a message, you would hide it where nobody would look. In a language nobody would bother to learn. Una was quiet for a moment. That is clever. And terrifying. On the 20th day of their journey, they reached the edge of the dead zone. Dahan slowed the ship and pointed out the window. There it is, he said. Nothing but darkness from here on. Tay looked out at the stars. Or rather, the lack of stars. The dead zone lived up to its name. There were no lights, no distant suns, nothing but endless black. It was like staring into a void. The coordinates from the letters point to a location about 2 days from here, Tay said. Can you take us there? Dohan nodded, but his face was worried. I can take you, but I do not like this place. It feels wrong. They flew into the darkness. The ship's sensors showed nothing. No signals, no debris, no signs of life. Just empty space stretching out in all directions. Then, on the second day, something appeared on the sensors. There, Una said, pointing at the screen. A structure. Small, but definitely artificial. Tay leaned closer. The image was fuzzy, but he could see it. A station, floating alone in the void. It was old, very old. The design was clearly human, but from a time before modern standards. Before sleek curves and efficient shapes. This station was boxy and practical, built for function rather than beauty. Outpost 7, Tay whispered. Duhan brought the ship closer. As they approached, more details became visible. The station was dark, with no lights visible through its windows. But the structure looked intact. No major damage, no signs of attack or decay. It looks abandoned, Una said. The letters came from here, Tay replied. Someone is still inside. They docked with the station, using an old airlock that still worked. The seal was tight, and the air inside was breathable. Tay was the first to step through. The interior was dim, lit only by emergency lights that cast everything in a pale red glow. Dust covered every surface. The air smelled stale and old, but the station was clean. No bodies, no wreckage, nothing to suggest disaster or violence. Hello? Tay called out. His voice echoed through the empty halls. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a light flickered on ahead of them. Then another. Then another. A path of lights leading deeper into the station. Something knows we are here, Una said quietly. They followed the lights. They walked through corridors lined with old equipment, past rooms filled with ancient computers and faded papers. Everything was preserved, like a museum frozen in time. Finally, they reached a large central chamber. And there, in the middle of the room, they found what they were looking for. It was a machine. A tall column of metal and glass, covered in blinking lights and humming with soft energy. It looked ancient, but it was clearly still working. Welcome, said a voice. It came from speakers, hidden somewhere in the walls. The voice was calm and neutral, neither male nor female. I have been waiting for you. Tay stepped forward. Who are you? I am the Keeper. I was created by the first humans who came to this station 247 years ago. My purpose is to watch and to warn, and to wait for someone who could understand. You sent the letters, Una said. Yes, I have been sending them for 112 years. To every human address I could find. Most were never delivered. Most were thrown away. But some reached their destination. And now you are here. Tay felt his heart beating fast. Why? Why did you send them? What are you warning us about? The Keeper's lights flickered. Because the first war is not over. The beings who fought it are still here, sleeping in the spaces between stars. And soon, very soon, they will wake up. How do you know this? Because I was built to know. My creators discovered the truth when they came to this place. They found something buried in the dark. Something terrible. And they knew that one day it would return. Tay looked at Una. Her face was pale. He turned back to the machine. Why did you write in ancient Terran script? Why not use standard galactic language? The Keeper's voice became softer, almost sad. Because the older species cannot be trusted. They have forgotten the first war. They have buried its memory under layers of progress and civilization. If they knew what was coming, they would panic. They would fight among themselves. They would make things worse. But humans are different? Humans are young. Humans still remember what it is like to be afraid, to be small, to face something bigger than themselves. And humans still remember their old words, the words that nobody else bothered to learn. Tay understood now. The message was meant for humans because only humans would listen. Only humans would understand the importance of something old and forgotten. The keeper spoke again. The sleepers will wake in 7 days. I have done everything I can. The rest is up to you. 7 days. They had 7 days to warn everyone. Tay took a deep breath. Then we need to move fast.